Emma, welcome to the Group X podcast. It's so good to see you.
I'm so excited, and you've got this beautiful GX behind you. You know, you're really lifting the game over there, Tony.
Thank you. Hey, I decided I just didn't want a plain background for me. I was like, no, Tony, need to do something. It was the woodwork side of things that came into it, and then the whole group exercise with all those little bits of backdrop in there. I was like, you know what, we've got to do something here, and yeah, this is what turned out. So who knows?
Good
It
on
may
you.
stay this way, or I may change it. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Well, it looks wonderful, and it's great to be on today. Thanks for having me.
No, all good, all good. So let's kick it off right then from the beginning. How did you get into the fitness industry? When did your inception into fitness start?
Oh, look, it was a big mistake actually because I just ended up being very terrible at law. I couldn't sit a law exam, failed it twice. Well, didn't fail it, but just didn't get enough to get the straight A average you needed at Otago University. Always knew I was good at sports and things like that. So I applied for the party school, which was FZ. Physical education down in the deep south of New Zealand, which was famous for being a party school and all that stuff. And I always knew I'd get in, but I never really thought it would be a real job. So it was an accident. It was two failed attempts at law that got me into the industry. Sort of followed that
Love it.
through. Started teaching Les Mills, and the rest was history, really. Sort of went from the deep south up to Auckland, round the world, and then eventually moved to the US and sort of towards what I'm doing now.
Talk to me about the first time you walked into a gym. How was that
Oh,
experience for you? What was obviously you're a fit human, in your younger days as well. Walking into a gym for the first time, run us through that if you can.
yeah, I mean, for me, so I was a student, and to be honest, back in the day, it was intoxicating. So this was in the 90s, the 90s. And Les Mills was in Dunedin, and it had a very, very amazing culture. First of all, we were a student city. So going to places like Les Mills was sort of outside the budget. I go there now, and there's all some very, very wealthy people with little pearls and twin sets as students. That wasn't us. We were like in
Yep.
the big army jackets, wearing the same pair of trackies for 3 years,
Yep.
probably vomiting all over them. I mean, just it was terrible, terrible, terrible days. But Les Mills was always a shining light right at the end of town in Dunedin. And I remember walking in there and just immediately being completely intoxicated, enamored by the environment. It had incredible teachers. And there were a lot of the brown boys, so there were the Stephen Renatas, the Sammy Taylors, the Lee Kakaripas, the Daryl Goads. So there was a whole culture there. I mean, not only were the
Yep.
classes great, you had this really social vibe going as well, and that sort of stretched into the membership as well. So my first experience was awesome, and because I came from phys ed and physical stuff, none of it really freaked me out. You look at all the machines, and it wasn't an intimidating thing for me because it was pretty much my world.
This is the Group X podcast. What was the first group exercise class that you attended?
My first one was something called X3, which was like advanced aerobics. So lots of knee lifts, lots of high kicks, lots of push-ups, lots of sit-ups. It sort of had a double peak format, I think, back in the day, but it was very high-end, lots of impact. And I remember that, and that was with Sammy Taylor in Dunedin. So that was my first class.
Excellent. And now that is that back in the days before pump and step and jazzergetics?
It was alongside some of them. At that point,
Okay.
Body Pull Pump, which as it was called back in the day, and then which became Body
Yeah.
Pump, had not launched yet. Step was definitely around. So that was another class, and circuits were big. So super circuit, we used to call it, or circuit,
Yeah.
where you were doing
Yep.
half machine, half aerobics. Those were huge at the time. Yeah, so aerobics X3, X2, there was low impact. So Wendy Sweet was doing some wonderful low impact classes back in the day, bums and tums, that sort of thing. But it certainly wasn't the diverse array of workouts that were around today. There were sort of some heavy hitters and then just a
Yep.
few around the edges.
What made you want to become an instructor? What made you want to go from being participant to up on stage and motivating people?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, we did it as a practical through phys ed school. So it was one of the practical things you could go and do. And I think there's something in you that either tells you this is something I'd like to do, or I couldn't think of anything worse. I think
Yeah.
people sort of thought themselves into those cues.
Yep.
And it was always there was just an inkling. because I was pretty much in my second year at phys ed school, and a friend and I decided to do it, and it was quite good to go through as a practical because it didn't really matter if you didn't make it. You sort of had the safety of going through the process. And as long as you turned up and did your hours, that was considered good enough. So it was kind of a way to sort of see, goodness, could I even be good at this? Because it's,
Yep.
you're putting yourself out there, right? And right at that age, do people like me? Can I,
Yeah.
like there's all of
Yes.
those things. So,
Yep.
so
Yep.
yes, that was sort of my foray into the industry. And then, of course, got involved. We got to audition. And if we were good enough, we were able to be picked up by Les Mills. So Cindy and Wendy at the time did say that I could go through. So I was very relieved.
Excellent.
And I actually found that I loved it. I remember my first track that I presented, it was a peak track, and I literally spent about 8 hours preparing for like a 4.5 minute track.
Track. Excellent. I love that because it shows the passion and drive that we have. When we get nervous and we share those moments with people that are, yes, it was a 4.5 minute track, but it took me 8 hours, or it took 8 hours to actually do this. I love that because it's nice to, I was going to say, it's nice to know others do the same things. Yeah. So the module training back then was obviously very different. There wasn't really much module training from what I'm picked up from chatting to Pete Manuel, to Susan, to Mid, that kind of stuff. The training modules today are very in-depth and go through a hell of a lot of stuff. What was your training module like back then for when you were introduced to Pump?
Pump, oh my goodness, so funny. So there was a small group of us. First of all, it was the thing that everyone wanted to teach. So you had to get selected to be the group that would go to Christchurch. We did our training in Christchurch. It was the very first training, and we did that with Janine, who's Jackie's sister, and Pete Phillips, who's just, swears like a motherfucking trucker. So, don't squat too low. Your knees are going to be on the fucking roof. Like, that was pretty much and there might have been a 2-pager that we're kind of going through in terms of, but it was more choreography than it was science. There
Yep.
certainly was sort of follow along. It was much more follow along. Here's what you got to do. Get up there and do it and harden up. Like, it was very much those, that sort of vein, rather than a very well thought out journey that you go through with materials sent to you ahead of time. I mean, it's a whole new world now, of course, that it really accelerates you towards mastery. So, but there's something about young, dumb, and full of it, and that's always something. That's always the edge that I like to play on. I like to be earlier in adoption, and once things start getting too tidy and too crossed and too dotted, I get a little bored. But that's just me. But all off for professionalism. But back in the day, she was rough, bro.
Yeah, I love it. I remember Pete telling me that part of the module training was, right, we're heading out here. There's a hill. We're going for a run.
Oh yeah, well that was it. I mean, it was all about physicality. I mean, back in the day, I mean, seriously, in that X3 class, we used to do a 7-minute push-up track on our toes. I mean, I don't think I'll ever repeat that in my life.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
that just hurts thinking about it.
I know. So it was about athleticism. That was some training we did in Canberra. You had to run up Red Hill or whatever it was. And
the
pump challenge wasn't successful unless no one could walk the next day,
The way that it should be, yeah.
The way that it should be, yeah. You'd get sued now or arrested.
Yeah. Can you talk us through the first time you did masterclass filming, the experience that you went through up on stage, who you were with? Give us a bit about that if you can.
Yeah, so I was, again, back in the bad old days. So there were people before me, of course, but I had a stint with McSweeney, which is always memorable, is a really good way of putting it. So we were filming, to be honest, up in Studio 1 at 11 o'clock at night, because we had to wait till all the classes had finished. So the last classes were usually at 8 o'clock. So 9:30, all the windows are steamed up. Everyone's sort of, there might be the odd straggler of a member up there, doing some things on their own terms. So we'd film with Frankie, who was, one guy who lived way out west in Auckland, and he happened to be doing, some filming stuff on the side. He was an engineer by trade, and Yeah, so we would film one camera, and then
Yep.
eventually we evolved to that same camera being repositioned for 10-second slots where we would go back and do pickups.
And do that.
But you had to time it because you couldn't edit it. I mean, I can't even tell you how I don't know how base it was at the time, but so yeah, we were filming to no one at night, and if you ever mucked up and you had McSweeney beside you, he let you know pretty quickly. You'd be redoing that track. So, not a lot of motivation, pretty repetitive cues. And,
Yep.
we were just teaching purely in our style. There wasn't too much thought around it. There wasn't a methodology that you were sitting
Yep.
on. It was just, make sure you introduce the track, teach with heart, say some interesting stuff, and then, bring it home at the end. So, that was sort of my memories, and to be honest, they're completely fond memories for me. I look
Yep.
at filming now, and I made this point in a recent post. I was in London last year at the huge, I guess
Yeah.
multi-million dollar, I mean, booms the size that, I've never seen before, and you felt like you're at a Lady Gaga concert. So
Yep.
just
Yep.
to see humble beginnings of two people on a stage at midnight, right through to just
So,
hundreds of international presenters, months of preparation, probably 6 months if you think about it, because there's 3 months in the choreography, the music, the prepping of the teams, getting fit, getting everyone in, the whole organization, the camera, the lights, the wardrobe, the whole thing. And then everyone pretty much being pretty close to word perfect in terms of, what you want people to be emulating around the world. That comes from a tight script,
yep.
understanding everything. So nothing but pride in terms of where it's gone now, but she was very humble beginnings.
Yeah. Look, I'm so grateful for those humble beginnings that you guys all went through because if they didn't happen, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. There'd be no reason for us to have a connection at all. And everything that from 2002, from up until now in my life has evolved around fitness, fitness industry, group exercise, and I owe it all to where it started way back in New Zealand, right way back then, and the experiences you guys had to evolve and develop the program into what it is now. So from me to you, thank you as well, because I know that my life is very different because of that, and it's very on a very different, stronger path than what it would have been years ago as well. And it's
Yeah, and I
just
think
nice
that's
to,
the why, isn't it? I think that's the underlying why is, for a fitter planet, which is really what the whole, well, at least from a Les Mills perspective, is what it stands for, and that we happen to express that in physical programs and better, healthy, and happier choices for our lives. But really, it's creating better humans. If you really boil it down, it's,
yeah.
my life is better, more healthy, more fulfilled, because of this company and the work we do in it. Yeah.
The amount of people, the amount of lives that have been changed because of it is just phenomenal. When you sit back and think how many people you taught to, how many people I taught to, how many people new instructors are teaching to, and every time that, yeah, I mean, for me, it really hit home recently with the news of Mike that I sort of sat back and reflected on the whole thing, and the amount of lives that have been changed for what we do is just phenomenal. I think sometimes we as instructors we can lose sight. We're stuck in our day-to-day grind, or we're stuck in everything that's happening, and sometimes it can be a bit frustrating. But when you look at the big picture, it's huge.
Absolutely. It's funny. We're
It's
just in
massive.
our family household. Our kids have just rediscovered rock. So we've been having a rock revolution. So they've been pulling out, Pink
Excellent.
Floyd and Guns N' Roses and Led Zepp and, um, you know, all the songs. And of course, they were often pump shoulder tracks. And, just to
Yep.
see them go through that revolution. And we started having this conversation last night around what would we be like? Who would we be if it hadn't been for music and if it hadn't been for these expressions? And then if you take our exercise programs, which go to these movements, you're now doing something great for your body. You're embodying the song in something good for you
Yeah.
as you take on the feeling of the songs. And I think we're almost using it as a way to unnumbify ourselves, if that is a word, coming out of COVID. Like we're sort of 3 years into this, whatever the fuck that was. But it's
Yeah.
been a journey, right? It's
Yeah.
been, we've done it all. We've had everything taken away. We've had a few things come back. We've lost so many people. And I'm with you. When Mike passed last year, and I still haven't put my profile post back up on Insta because
Yeah.
there's a part of me that's still in mourning because it's kind of like, oh shit, if a a person and a presence that big is no longer here. What the hell is it all for? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm being dramatic, but it
No.
was such a big thing, and
Yeah.
so many memories and such good times attached to him and the times and the journey and life itself. And it's just put me, I've never felt this way
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of, considering mortality. I mean, we've watched a lot of people die. Obviously, I'm a parent, so you're always thinking about these things. You have to sort of, always have a plan, right? Because there's people
Yeah.
that depend on you. But something hit different when Mike passed. And I think it's partly where we are in this crazy time, but also it did tie back to the good that we do and the people whose lives we change. And to be honest, the people who are in my life, I mean, you're the same. We know people all over the world. My life is so rich through these people. I just feel like I've got thousands and thousands of best friends, and I'm not
Yeah.
even kidding.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying that because as I wouldn't be doing a podcast. This wouldn't be this whole what I'm doing right now wouldn't have been possible for that. And it was, as you said, I think, and you don't need me to tell you this, but I'm going to say that take as long as you need to mourn. Yeah, there's no time limit on mourning. It's one of those things where you process in your time, and if you need to hang on to it forever, hang on to it forever. The time will come where you become at peace with what that is in its way. And I'm not saying that to you, but I say that to anyone that's listening as well. If they are struggling with it, guys, take the time, take 5-10 minutes a day just to sit in it and be present in whatever it is that you're going through, because it's massive, but it's also reflect on the good times, as you said as well. Those amazing experiences that you shared with Mike, or even just in the industry alone, because yeah, it's important to stop and smell the roses on the way. You've always got to go and do the hard stuff. You've got to go and lift the heavy stuff, but you also need time to get over and strengthen and lengthen and have that mindfulness
Oh,
as well.
absolutely. And to be
Yeah,
honest, it's in much more gratitude and thankfulness and all of that stuff than it is in the sadness.
yeah,
It's almost like, given that, now what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
more that. Yeah.
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 No, that's fantastic. So, masterclass filming, if we can go back to that for a little bit, because I remember when I first started back in 2003, and the lovely Shannon Cleary, massive shout out to Shannon, my
I
nana.
love you, Shan.
She's a top bird. She's a top bird. Um, wh- she took me under her wing and sort of guided me through this journey of mine. But I remember sitting down and watching some VHS with her,
Yes.
back from the day. And I remember the one camera in the room and the Les Mills World of Music, World of Fitness, sorry, sign on the stage. And it was just so, compared to the polished production of today, it was raw, as you mentioned before,
Yes.
so raw. And yeah, I can only imagine that you guys would have had some amazing times on stage. But did you ever get nervous? Did you ever have those moments where you're about to walk up there to film, where you're having the full, oh my God, no, I can't.
Yeah, I think nerves, yeah, definitely. You had lots of moments and there were lots of reasons for it. So in the early days, and Shannon will be able to attest to this, I mean, it was school of hard knocks. The feedback you were getting wasn't always, sugar coated and the nicest. And anything could happen in filming week, right? Like, because you come in, you get given your stuff. I mean, back in the day, first of all, you didn't really get it filmed. It was kind of like, oh, we're still working on the cool down. We think you're teaching the
I'm
chest, but it might be the shoulder, whatever. And then there's little games. I mean, there's always little games, who's showing up to teaching, and back in the day, it was like who was in sick shape, who's ripped, who's, all the things.
Yep.
Again, you get arrested or sued today for doing all the stuff that we did. But that was the day. Those were the social norms. It was
Yes.
role modeling, and you were
Yep.
expected to look and be and say certain things, because that's when you're part of a system. There is a certain amount of that's expected. You can't just sort of fly off and do whatever. So
Yeah.
that was professionalizing, as we were coming in, but it was still very untidy. So things like choreography might not be fully signed off. The music might not be fully edited, and you might still have creative directors coming in and saying, that ab's too short or too long, or it needs another 8 counts or whatever.
That's it.
So
Yep.
you had a little bit of that. So you were coming in, the creative process wasn't finished, and you were supposed to be polishing it up, and there'd be extra variables, let's just put it that way. So yes, you
Yep.
would be really nervous. And then there was things like, like the wrong song might get played. Like there
Yep.
were just, as you could imagine, when things aren't signed off, you are in the process. You're not at the end of one
The
process,
project.
and
Yeah.
like you are today. So
Yep.
today you would get given your bicep track. That would be it. That would be your base scripts. That's the science from Bryce. That's how you've got to open and close more or less, and then you have to work that up to the point that it gets signed off. That was certainly not our. And but having said that, I look back at the filming weeks, and they were literally some of the best weeks of my life. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One is you do the emotional roller coaster. So you peak really early because you're still standing in who you are. You get
Yep.
completely stripped down. You go to hell and back as you drop out, and you're 2 days out from filming, and you're teaching worse than any person you've ever seen on planet Earth. Wondering, so that's what you're about to step back on the stage with, completely deconstructed,
Yep.
dismantled, destroyed. This is back in the day, and we all played our part in doing it as well. And then
Yep.
you'd somehow bounce up into the enormity of the occasion. But quite
Yeah.
often, I mean, back in the day, we were doing 2 classes a day all the way into filming. That doesn't happen now. You
Oh.
train before you go, you have
Yeah.
days off, you're spreading it out, you have light days. So, we were training hard, pushing hard, like everything was just in that high volume um, realm rather than are we getting sleep? You didn't eat, eating was cheating. Like,
Yep.
like I mean, it's
Jelly
surprising
beans and
we're
scotch.
alive.
That's all.
Yeah, it's surprising some of us are left to tell the tale, to be honest. But it's interesting. And then the antics. The antics were my favourite. Like whatever the team was, there would always be some special chemistry. There would
Yep.
always be a prankster or two in the cast of whoever it was. And you just had your favourite targets. I mean, Susan, Tolly, Renata, and I. If you ever got us on a filming together, the boys would just shudder because Matt Braxton and Corey. I mean, we would just rip them and
Yep.
just the tanning, the eyebrows, the waxing, the protans. I mean, the whole thing. The
Yep.
protein diets, the farts. I mean, you name it. It was, and we just knew how to wind them up. So
Yep.
it was memorable, amazing, and you never see that. Even the old videos, you only see what was captured. You don't see everything
Yes.
that was going on
The
in the
behind.
in the
Yeah.
background. But highly memorable, very amusing, soul destroying, and also awesome.
This is the Group X podcast.
So, how many classes? How many programs were you trained, or are you trained in?
Let's have a look. So, I mean, back in the day, I was doing a bunch of formats that weren't Les Mills. So the X3s, the circuits in the early days, bums and tums. So some of those things, I created Knockout, which was a boxing program way back in the beginning, taught pump, body attack, combat, core. I never did cycling, but I did start cycling when I was teaching with Equinox years later, and I actually really enjoyed it because I love that. That BPM is a real dance BPM, which is really my natural love.
Yep.
What else did I do? Body flow, body balance.
Yep.
That was probably it, actually. So, and back in the day, you didn't teach everything. Like you chose a few. You did a few. You trained them around the world, and taught a few formats. Yeah.
Did you have the opportunity to? I should have probably done my research before this, so I'm going to probably sound stupid. But did you masterclass filming for all those programs? All the Les Mills programs? Or which ones were you master filming?
I actually didn't do many masterclasses. A lot of people think I did a lot more than I did. I did a few in the early days. I used to run the group fitness. I was a master trainer, so we traveled a lot. So it got to the point where we were spending so much time overseas, we were often missing filmings, or our focus was on pushing it out. And it was better for Mike, for example, to work with Donna and some of the team, Ruthie T and people like that. And then Susan, later on, Susan, Tolly, Renata, they sort of became staple presenters, and we would pop in occasionally. So I didn't do that many, but I did pump. I did, let me see what else. I did a body attack, but way back in the day. Combat, you know what? I can't even remember. Body balance, body flow, yes. Core, I might have done one, or maybe not. Yeah, just not much actually, but the ones it was just at a critical time, I think. When the famous five were, scooching around the world.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I like hearing that. Have you got a favourite release?
Oh God, I can't even remember back that far. Oh, there's a oh God, I can't remember the numbers. There's a number. I don't know if it's 23. There's a sprint that we did a lot during COVID, which we loved. There was one. I think it was with Bus and Glenn. So there are releases that I love, and usually it's the
Yep.
music, and I love the
Yes.
feeling of the workout, and they might
Yeah.
become my go-to if I'm in that space where don't piss me off with a song that I don't like or a workout that I don't enjoy quite so much. I mean, they're all great and they're all good for your body. More often than not, I just put something on and go,
Yep. Yeah.
like, but I actually, if I do stuff in a week, I like to do that workout 2 or 3 times because for
Yep.
me, like anyone, there's that learning curve and
Yes.
then there's, oh, I've got this. And then it's, oh, I'll master this. So
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy that when I'm looking at the Les Mills Plus stuff. I've
Yep.
worked my way through a couple of the challenges, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I mean, look, I love the old stuff that was a little bit slower. I loved some of the McSweeney specials, the tribal dance and
Yes.
flaunt it,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I mean, all those good songs came back about every 3 years because they were that good,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people just wanted them to be remastered. So
Yeah.
yeah, oh God, probably the ones that you perform right, the ones that you're on because there's a whole different meaning. Like a lot of people love their initial training release for that reason because you go under the
Yep.
covers with it, and it brings back so
Yep.
many memories. So no, sorry, I'm useless. I can't remember any numbers.
No, it's completely fine. But yeah, I think you summed that up very similar to how do I have a favorite release? No, I have favorite tracks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
there'll be like a track from release 23, or there's a track from Pump 56 that just sticks in my head that I go, wow. And it's obviously something at that time when I was either presenting it and teaching it, or whether I was just in a class doing it, that reminds me. As soon as I hear it on the radio or hear it on Spotify or whatever these days, I'm taken straight back. And it's obviously it hits something in here when you go, yeah, that's yeah. And if I do it here in the garage, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the big hooks, and that's that interestingly, that was also the hardest thing for me to step away when we moved to the United States and I decided to leave Les Mills. That was one of the hooks that was very hard to walk away from. I mean, the music never goes away, and I was teaching
Yep.
over here, so it wasn't like it was a hard stop, but it's got an emotional hold over you, and it makes you feel a certain way. And I think,
Yep.
again, back to that earlier point, I think a life without music and feelings and heightened emotion doesn't make for an interesting existence.
Yeah. So you just touched on then moving over to the US. What took you over to the US? What was the I suppose the draw card that made you shift away from NZ?
Yeah, right. So first of all, I was part of a team of about 20 that came over to the US in 2005. So we took back direct distributorship of Les Mills here in the US. And we loved it.
Yep.
Like we were living down in near Newport Beach, and we lived at Laguna Beach for 6 months. We all came over, thought that we'd wipe the country in 3 months and all be back home, and of course that turned into a year. And then we went back. We had two small daughters at that point, so we came
Yep.
over as a family, and just worked with the team to sort of set up 10 regions in the US here. Was it 10, something like that?
Wow.
And so we did that. So it was a big job, but we loved it, and we sort of knew
Yep.
everyone. We pulled in a team from global, and then when we went back, my husband and I enjoyed it over here so much. I said, look, we should just apply, for green cards because there's this thing, and you just go in. So we did that, and I put a middle person in. You pay someone, a few dollars, and they just put you in every year. And then, lo and behold, we went back to New Zealand, got back into life, whatever, had another child. And then, lo and behold, I got this call from this American woman. She said, oh, you've won a green card. And I just thought it was a scam of some description. So I kept hanging up on her, but she was really persistent. So in the end, I looked into it and I thought, holy shit, we just won green cards,
Yep.
which means we can go and work and live in the United States for 10 years if we want. And so I talked to my husband about it. And we both thought, I said, look, I'd love to do this because, love New Zealand, love Les Mills. But, I mean, you can tell from me, I get not bored, but I don't like it once things get to that professional
Yeah.
level. And just, I'm very well traveled. I was born in London. We lived there, love traveling. I've been an IMT. I've been on the road for 5 years, hardcore.
Yep.
And then to just be sitting on a little island, and we'd had kids, and I'd changed my job. So I wasn't traveling very much. And so I was just feeling a little bit small, a little bit
Yep.
caught. So anyway, I said to my husband, we should do this. And he said, yeah, okay. But one of us had better make sure we have a job, because I think it's, even for us, it's a bit irresponsible to move to another country with five of us and no job. So we both agreed that. We both looked around and couldn't really get anything to really stick. So we decided we wouldn't go. Then we went away on a holiday and I did not sleep a wink. I was like, this is the wrong decision. I feel sick. And then as we were driving back to Auckland, I just had a visceral reaction and I just thought, we've got to go. I mean, I've got to go. I mean, I just need to go and have this adventure, this experience, something like that. So
This is the Group X podcast.
Yep.
So we reached out to a good friend, Matt Church, who very, very good strategically. So Lee and I flew over, spent a day with him and said, right, here's what we want to do. How do we go about it? So we had a bit of a strategy session. He came up with 3 scenarios. He said, and I'd never really been treated like this before, but he said, right, here's option 1. It's your best option. You've got 24 hours to go and get me an answer on that. So we went back to New Zealand. I had 24 hours. Couldn't make that one work because it involved us living in Baltimore, and wild horses couldn't draw us to live in Baltimore. So then we moved to option 2, and then that worked. So we decided 5 weeks later we were moving to the United States. So, you know, very, very lucky to have all these people in our life that can make that happen. You know, came over, worked for Les Mills for a little bit, helped out with the office over here, and then pretty quickly got picked up by Equinox and worked for them for 3 years. So that was how it unfolded, really.
I love hearing that. That's unique as well, but I love the fact that you didn't sit back and go, oh, you know, years later and go, oh, what if? You did it. You went out there and that the moment that you had that, as you said, that visceral moment of going, no, this is wrong. We've got to go. I think it's fantastic and well done for doing it. You know, but who knows where you would have been if you just stayed in NZ, but look at where you are now from the journey that you've taken and what you've been able to achieve. I think it's huge. So well done. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Now,
And
with Equinox, what were you doing?
Body.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. Yes. Yeah. What were you doing with Equinox, at Equinox? What were you brought on board to do for them?
Yeah, so we had a team. So it was our director of group fitness programming. So we were across about 10 categories, so everything from running to bar to dance, all the things. And there was a team, probably all in about 15 or 20 of us, spread across New York, a few in LA, and a couple in Miami. And we were responsible for some signature formats within the brand, and then just developing all of the programming throughout the brand in terms of group fitness. So, and that sort of, you know, we did a lot of joint work with the PT department. They have a very, very good personal training development scheme in there, and things like that. So yeah, we launched a lot of programs. They had to be press worthy, they had to be scientifically backed, they had to be successful, you know, all the usual things you'd expect from programs. And with Equinox, they were very edgy. So we would try a lot of things that weren't in the market yet. So by the time something becomes a trend, it's not really a trend, you're in the trend. You're not at the front of the trend. So a lot of people think they're being trendy, they're not. They're right in the middle of they're right in the middle of the trend. That's why people come to the class. A far harder thing is to actually innovate in that space, because if you're at the bleeding edge, you're creating a story that doesn't yet exist, and that's a different thing. So that was so we'd do a little bit of both. We'd do crowd pleaser programs, but we'd also push the envelope a little bit. We were very early before I got there, like Animal Flow and programs like that were in Equinox 10 years before the world heard about them. You know, like they had some of the best trainers doing those sorts of things. We were doing a lot of in my time, we refreshed the whole bar category. I worked with a wonderful girl, Nicole Deander, and we reshaped all of bar. So we did a triple bar, we did innovation, we bought a new bar work that didn't exist, we refreshed old programs, we introduced equipment lists, you know, and took that to the next level. So that was one example. We also did all the rooftops, started creating indoor, outdoor turfs. So we really programmed out, we called it the playground, and that became very successful indoors and also outdoors in places like Southern California. So we did some amazing programming. It was great. Some of it's designed to stay, some of it was seasonal, because it's all about like when you're working for a brand like Equinox, it's all about staying in the news. So so we had a lot of fun, created a lot of great product, and a lot of those programs still exist today.
It sounds like a very different gym to a normal everyday gym you would come across.
Yeah, I mean, Equinox considers itself as a brand category of one, and there's a lot of investment that they put into keeping it that way. You know, it's a very private brand and it gets on with stuff, but those that go know,
Yeah.
like it's a
Yeah.
yeah, you feel the difference. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Nice to hear. Nice to hear that there's gyms out there that are in the forefront and trialing and testing that kind of stuff. Because here in Aussie, I mean, I'm probably sure there are a couple, but you don't hear too much of that kind of stuff. We hear it, as you said, we think it's a trend or yes, this is new, but we're actually in it already. You know, it's been going for a while and it's just finally hit our shores here, and we're like,
And that's
let's jump
fine,
on.
Tony. And that's fine
Yep.
because it takes a lot of money. Like you have to be an Apple. If you
Yeah.
look at true innovation, to be at the bleeding edge, you're acting on
Yeah.
insights that aren't fully shaped thoughts. You know, they're pieces of conversation. Then it's trying to create something, that doesn't exist essentially. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun times.
Cool. So what are you doing these days?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I'm doing a number of things. So first of all, most of my focus each week currently is going to Good Soul Hunting. So that's our executive search brand. So I teamed up with some colleagues that I'd worked with in past Les Mills lives. Actually, Lucy, who I hired probably 15 years ago in Les Mills under People and Culture. So she and her husband, and then Andrea also from Les Mills. So we're a boutique search agency. So we place senior roles, so executive roles, down to about a country manager in health and wellness businesses, and even a little broader than that, businesses that are purpose driven. So we work with slightly more evolved startups, scale ups, particularly people who want to scale here in the United States. So that's sort of our sweet spot. And that might be brick and mortar. So it might be someone like Barry's Bootcamp, or we do mental health apps, or it might be people that are a bit more hybrid, or it might be something like a financial gym that's adjacent to the fitness industry, but they're purpose driven. So yeah, we build out teams. Predominantly here in the US, we do some work in Europe, but this seems to be where the action is most of the time. So that takes a lot of my time. I also represent the Fit Tech company, which is a fitness technology network company, which is out of Munich, and they have a growing presence here in the United States. And that keeps me close to a lot of the trends. We work with a lot of the the startup tech founders, a lot of young folks coming through with great ideas, and that network allows them to accelerate their efforts quicker, teams them up with investment, scales, all the way through to being a mature company. So that's really cool. And then I do some consultancy. So consultancy, I go to most of the main events. So we had the CES, which Consumer Electronics Show. So I went to that recently. We've got Connected Health and Fitness, which is happening here in Los Angeles, and that has got a very, very good lineup, very high caliber of attendee. I'll do Ursa. I'll go to FIBO over in Cologne, Germany. And then I'm only planned out about halfway through this year, to be honest. I think things are changing so quickly, and I think there'll be some interesting things. And then I'm an NED on a few companies, so I do some advisory for a few companies that it makes sense. So yeah, busy.
You are one busy woman.
Yeah, lots of things on, but always just seeing where I can help. And it is it's very rocky out there right now. Like a lot of the brands that I have represented or represent, it's rocky. It's really tough times for a lot of brands. Some are in hyper growth, like Basic Fit, who I've also consulted to. Some are really stretched, and mass layoffs continue through the tech companies and things like that. So interesting times, but each year is slightly different.
Is a result of COVID?
No, I think how far back do you go in terms of why are we having a downturn? But I think it's the after effects. Look, hey, here we are at a 7 to 10 year period. We're in some sort of downturn, call it what you want, but, things are a little shakier. People are laying people off. It is, 6 months ago, it was a strong candidates market. It's a little bit turned the other way now, where people are losing their jobs and now they're back looking and not so interested in, can I work 1.5 days from the moon and, all the rest of it. That's sort of getting a little bit more, it's sort of swinging back a little bit. So, it's quite a bit of uncertainty. People are definitely watching their dollars, although not here in the US. We just keep spending through everything. That's one constant.
On Good Soul Hunting, where did that idea come from? Because I think it's fantastic. But where did the the thought of that come from?
Yeah, well, Matt and Lucy had actually started a consultancy because they were in recruitment. Lucy was in people and culture in Les Mills, in the US, in the UK, doing global. So that was sort of her background, was people, and she came from recruitment as well. Matt, her husband, they decided to start. We connected in London, just randomly went to some cafe one day, and we just started chatting. And they had said, "Oh, look, we want to get back to the US at some point." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'd like to spend more time in Europe at some point because I was born in London." And they said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm spending half my life introducing these people to those people and those people to these people." And then we looked at each other and we thought, should we maybe do something together? Like, because they've already launched Pipeline Partners. And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." I said, "But I'm not recruiting. Like that's not where I see my life going. But I love the concept, and I'd love us to be able to build a team where happy to do some of the business development, marketing, brand side of it, but not." Sit and recruit and do the search from dawn till dusk. I never really saw that as being a good use of me. I think there are other people that are much better at that. So, so anyway, we talked about it and we thought, shit, let's do it. And I said, and if we're going to do this, we'll have to rebrand, and if you want to come back to the US, I think we really need to shape it around that sentiment. Yep. So that was it. And then we went through the usual 200,000 million names, and then we decided on one. And then I went, it's Good Soul Hunting, like at the last minute. Because if anyone's been through a branding process, finding a name you can protect and finding a story that you can tell something around, all of those things, can be quite a thing. And every cool word we came up with, there's a recruitment company called that.
Yep.
So anyway, so that was that. And then we just got into helping people. And yes, of course, we moved a bit during the pandemic because we started off with bricks and mortar. Then, of course, everything went online. Now it's hybrid. So that's allowed us to sort of find out where our edges are, and we're good souls. We like to work with good souls. We worked with a couple of assholes early on, and we will never do that again. Like, it was accidentally, you find things out right, but you make all the mistakes, and also you flex in the times. Like everyone else, we changed our personas and who and how we were helping several times, as you do. That's business. But that's it. So that's the concept, and we love it. So we're very good friends with a lot of the investors, with people who are trying to scale. They need to be a little bit past startup because you need to be able to invest in a team, because obviously you pay for search. What's great about us is that we can sort through the 423 people that applied online, 99% of which will be shit. We can then reach out. We have deep tools in LinkedIn that help us find people that you won't be able to, and then we headhunt. So we will actually go and shoulder tap you, Tony, and say, you would be ideal. Would you be interested in something like this? This is what it might look like. And what we find is that the passive market, the people that are looking but not looking, is very big, and often there's great people in role. That's why
I love ideas like that that can come out from having a beverage with someone. Sitting down having a coffee. It's fantastic. The whether it's an alcoholic beverage or just a cup of coffee, it's sitting down and taking the time to go, hey, I've got some skills here I want to share with you, and can we do something? Brilliant. Oh, well done with that too. It's keep going. Don't stop. Don't stop. Hopefully it travels over here to Aussie as well, and we can get some of that happening in Australia, because I don't think it is here at the moment or anything like that. But I think it's a brilliant concept.
Cool. Thank you.
This is the Group X podcast.
Now, recently, as I understand from chatting to you, you've also released a book.
I have. I've re-released it. So, February 2020, I launched a Building a Badass boutique in London, in Shoreditch. Actually, it was just before the Sweat event, which is an event that UK Active hosts in February. And so I'd presented for the previous 3 years, and I said, look, I've written a book exactly for this sector. Would you be interested in helping me run a book launch the night before? And then I'm happy to gift on behalf of my sugar daddy, who actually bankrolled the whole thing. So was a good friend from Keep Me, and they basically hosted this event and then provided a free book for all the people, the 500 people or whatever that were attending.
Wow.
So very, very lucky. So, and I had been, so that was then, and it was a snapshot in time. So there was case studies, It was sort of people have called it like the Bible of boutique fitness. So it wasn't just a story. It was like, okay, there's 10 touches, everything from brand, from product through systems. There's 10 things you need to have lined up regardless of business. If you're thinking about it, online, offline, hybrid, whatever, you need to be ticking this off anyway. And then I just included a whole lot of case studies. You know, here's a big one, here's a little one, here's a boutique one, here's one that does the bar. You know, so I was lucky enough to speak to all these people and just include stories. And really the impetus behind it was I was part of an entrepreneurial course, and one of the things we had to do was to launch a book, because they said if you're going to be serious in business, you've actually got to launch a book. It's way better than a calling card. It forces you to crystallize your thoughts, gets you out there, and then when you promote it in the right way, it it builds your expertise in a niche. Like that's what it's about. So I thought, oh shit, I better do this. And so I went and I thought, I'm going to hybrid publish. I'm going to get someone to help me do it. And then this book launch was coming, and I didn't have enough time because they needed something like 12 weeks. And I said, well, I've only got 8. And they said, well, we can't help you. And I went, oh shit. So I went around the world. I reached into Natalie Plumondon Thomas, who's my accountability partner. She's a speaker and a writer. She's written like 15 books. And she said, right, I'm going to line you up with a girl who can, lay it up for you. I'll line you up with someone that can help you with the designing. I'll lay you up with someone who can help you become a bestseller. I'll line you up. So she did all of that. And then I hired actually Kate Cracknell, who was a very good journalist used to, run Health Club Management Magazine, etc. Really good friend. And I said, would you edit my book? And she said, never edited a book. I said, I don't care. Can you start tomorrow? So we went on this journey together of just, doing the best we could, and I said, oh, it's only going to take you a couple of hours, like.
Yeah, that's taken you months to write, but yeah, a couple of
my
you'll be
God.
right.
Well, it was really funny because it happened I did from start to stop. It was 6 months process, but I was on the road. I was working full time. I was in 3 continents. It was full on. So I actually went to a very, very expensive conference that I paid a lot of money to be at, and I pretty much slept through all the lectures because I was doing all the lectures. It was in beautiful Italy. It was the Health and Wellness Institute, whatever. Bloody Tony DeLead, had talked me into going. It was $5,000 or some extraordinary amount of money that you never pay to go to a conference. But anyway, I was there and I was just absolutely exhausted because I was writing all night and then trying to sit through these things during the day. So wrote it all, she edited it up, found my designer, got my girl that took it up online, and it became an international bestseller. So very, very fortunate. And they force you to do things like reach out for praise quotes, which when you're a person, the last thing you want to do is approach people and say, can you say some nice things about me? Do you know what I mean? Can you read my book and say some nice things? Now, for perspective, this was the week before Christmas. So the week before Christmas, I was sending this out, begging people to quickly read it and drop some. Now, I couldn't believe it. About 20 or 30 people, everyone except I think there was one person who turned me down. I think it might have been Joey from Barry's turned me down because he literally was in another country or whatever. Everyone sent something back, and I was just like, oh my God, this is just I've never had a feeling like that before. And that's my group, my entrepreneurial group said, you've got to do it, because if you don't do that, it's just not good business basics. You can't lean into your networks. You're not putting yourself out there. You can't, whatever. So anyway, I did that. And then of course, February rolled round. We ran all the books off and out we went. Roll forward. So that was February, right? March, pandemic hits. Holy shit. Everything goes online. And everyone's like, oh, that's a disaster. Oh my God, you were just selling your book. It was actually great. The amount of people who bought it, to learn, reshape, and use during COVID was extraordinary. So 2020, a lot of people got into self-helpery. A lot of them got into, how do I do better? And it was a very, very good thing. But here we are now, 3 years later, and I read the book and I went, whoa, the trends have shifted, case studies have shifted, half these people have gone out of business, consolidation, M&A, all of these things have happened. I need to do an update. And Tashi Marshall-Bean, who's a very, very amazing cycling turnaround and startup specialist in boutiques, said to me, you got to do an audio. We've got to get more of your audio. So she put a challenge out to me, a few weeks ago before Christmas and said, you got to do this. And so I went, oh, holy shit. And then you look at the stats, most people are listening as they're listening now, listening to learn rather than reading. People do both, but this needed to be listening equity. So yeah, and then all my podcast people said, just lock yourself in a wardrobe, do it yourself. And I went, oh, I'm not doing it myself. So I found, I'm so busy into Christmas. I need to ring up the phone and say, get me a studio. I'm coming in for 3 days and let's go. So I found Punch Audio, who's a wonderful guy out of Santa Monica. He's a retired actor. I think he looks like he's come from The Young and the Restless, something like that. He's one of, and so he knows the whole crowd, and of course, and he goes by Punch. And then when I looked him up, I thought, oh, holy shit, he's actually famous. Like his real name, he's actually famous. And so anyway, so he's taken me through the process. So it was quite an adventure. So just before Christmas, we went to London for Christmas. Just before then, we locked it out. I came back just on New Year's Eve. We finished voicing it all, and now it's going up on Audible.
When you say you finished voicing it all, you sat in a room for 3 days.
I stood in a room. I mean, that's a funny thing. The first recording studio I went to, they gave me a seat, and I said, I need to get rid of the seat. I've got to stand up. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I can't sit down and read this book. And, you don't go in and see Justin Bieber, sitting in a school chair recording his songs,
So true. So true.
So anyway, I did it over a couple of studios because there was some renovation going on, and there was a new studio coming up, and they let me go in first before even the tech was in. So we spent half our days in there getting all the tech lined up. But so I did that, recorded it, and it's about 5.5 hours of recorded material, which by the time you go back and correct your pickups and stumble on words. So I listened to the whole thing. It takes about 5.5, 6 hours to listen to the whole thing. And there's just certain things that, I got something wrong or a fact wrong. Then all the trend reports came out. Then there was so many changes. So, so it was a really fun exercise. It's not as cheap as doing it yourself, but I prefer that help because, for a few $1,000s, I'm working with someone who's really good. They get to do all the engineering. I don't know how to take all the gaps out without manually doing it, all of that stuff. So, so it was quite a journey.
That excites me. That's the nerd side of my brain that gets excited to hearing that, and the whole concept of you standing in a studio and doing that, because that's part of why I set this up down here is that whole voiceover concept of being able to record something that's audible. I think it's brilliant. So your book now is obviously still in hard copy as well as on Audible.
It is. So it's available as an ebook and also as a paperback copy on Amazon, so that's worldwide, and a lot of people prefer that. I did opt to print it in color, which is, everyone tells you not to do it, but I was representing boutique fitness, and it is like a boutique Bible, so it's a little bit more expensive than some books of that size might be, but that's because it is a Bible. It's also got a 100-page workbook that goes with it, like if you can click through and all of those sorts of things as well. So and then Audible, Audible price it. I believe that's the process, so I won't be putting the price on that, but it'll be your normal, whatever the normal book prices to listen to it. That's
right. I'll put some links in the show. There's links within the show notes so people can actually find it as well.
That'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, look, Emma, thank you so much for coming on the show. There's 2 more questions that I want to throw at you, and these are questions that I've asked every single guest that's come on the podcast with me. What bit of advice can you give to an instructor that might be listening that wants to improve on what they're doing?
Right. So it's probably always the same advice that I give people is we're only as good as the people that we serve and how they feel about themselves. So I think if you can line up how you want people to feel through an interaction with you, be that a group fitness class, be that a word in the street, how are you turning up in life so that when a person brushes with you in whatever interface, what is it that they walk away with? And is it inspiration? Is it education? Is it feeling loved? Is it feeling a part of something? Like there'll be something, and it'll be very closely aligned to your value set and what people tell you you're good at. Like I'm told, for example, and it's that toilet, it's the bathroom conversation. You're in a class, you're sitting in the stall next door, and someone says, "Oh, I love that Emma because she just makes me feel, whatever it is." So what is that feeling that you want people to get from you. And then I think there's a whole lot of ways that you can take people to that place. And notice none of this has to do with, learning your choreography and all of that. In
Yeah.
fact, it's got everything to do with that. But the
Yep.
point is the end game is the feeling.
Yeah.
And because that should be a way that you feel when you're delivering it, it's the way that they should be receiving it. And it also speaks to our style. So there's teachers that I go to, some of them are great clinicians. No one moves like they do. And I remember Magnus Ringberg was this amazing dancer from Sweden. I used to go to his class. His movement was just exquisite. I mean, he was a fantastic teacher as well, but it was his movement and extension that I went for. Other people are fantastic coaches. Other people are scientific. Other people are like G, and they'll just take the roof off. Anything could happen, and it's all just about a brain explosion and losing yourself. So I would get very tight on that. What are you here to provide in terms of that? And then start using all the tools. How do I learn my choreography? How do I prepare for class? What's the state that I'm in? What do I look like, feel like, where? All the things start to come into that moment. You're a performer. We have such great examples. Look at all the great pop stars. I mean, look at what Austin just did with Elvis. Like, we have this ability to create just these amazing moments, not overcreate them. Like, I'm not talking about being fake. I'm talking about take what is inherently in you and finding a way to be even more of that. And it will shape the things that you say, the way that you say them, what you wear, how you take the room, what your intention is. And that energy will never run out. Like, I see people blowing themselves up and getting exhausted and all the rest of it. And you can overwork, you can overteach, you can over exercise. I get it. But if you're on purpose and you're living out your values, that's probably the biggest advice I could say. Pete Manuel, great example, entertainer. Like, he's going to sing his way through, and you're just going to feel so happy being in his class, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably going to drive some mantra into you. I'm probably going to give you some things to think about and, to extend yourself, because that's my thing. I'm a firelighter. My thing is to light stuff under you so that you step into your potential. Steve Renard is something else. Mick Sweeney was always able to bring out that, he could be so connective, even though, he's got this hard side. He could really make you feel special, more than anyone I've ever seen. Him on an on day, you couldn't beat him, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I like that, because you've touched on something that I've chatted to people about before here, and it's about just being uniquely you. Yep. Just find who you are. Find who you are, find what you stand for, and bring that out, because that's what's going to connect with the most amount of people. If you're trying to be fake, people are going to see it. If you're trying to be someone you're not, stop. Just be you. Work out who you are. Be comfortable in your own skin and portray that, and tick all the boxes that you need to tick, but just do that. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. You've tapped into what I was looking at for there. Is there anything in the industry that needs to change? Is there anything that we could be doing better as an industry, as a fitness industry?
Yeah, I kind of think we could be doing everything better. So I'm a half glass full girl. And yet I look at our stats where, we're still losing half our membership within 6 months, or, some are a bit better than that. Maybe it's 30%, whatever. The point is, we're just at the beginning of creating experiences that are engaging and sticky enough to hold people over time. And so I think there's so many things that we can improve on. I think we're doing the basics okay. You go to a club, there's equipment there, there's a workout, there's stuff. But if you look at the heightened experiences, so I'm thinking about, the Four Seasons in Las Vegas, where I've had a great experience, or, ABBA. I mean, ABBA's my great example at the moment. In London, like their whole show, which is in, it's holograms, and it's definitely bringing together the digital world and the live world. But I felt things in that show that I think are going to be possible in our world. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the metaverse. It's very early days. You got Body Combat, you got a few products in there. But we're going to get to a point where things can get a lot more engaging. You've got your digital companion in your phone, and of course you've got your digital detoxes happening at the same time. But I think there's just almost every way we could improve. Like, I think the partnerships, we've only really got as far as a shake and a retreat. There has to be more around that. And then it's really speaking to the soul of the people. Like, it's so many little things, and I touch on some of the things in my book, and just think of the heightened experiences that you have in your life. Like for me, it was Ibiza because I just had such a great thing there. But what was it that made that so special? It
Yeah.
was the weather, it was my family, it was my friends, the conversation, the music, the parties. And so you sort of think, okay, let's unpack that. How do I make that? How do I recreate that? And I'm seeing a lot of that happening in a lot of the clubs. They are going to much further lengths to create a social hub way beyond a third space. How do we become more engaging than a Starbucks, which has
Yeah.
really held
Yep.
that third space for the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? So how do we as a club do that? What are the services and the things that what are the unmet needs? I spend a lot of time thinking and watching human behavior to just say, what could we offer that person they don't even know they need, but it's
Yeah.
obvious when I look at it. And you look at a bit of data, you're going to be data led. Oh, these people like those things, these people like those things. There's got to be a way where are we wasting time on the non-joyous parts of living, and how do we dial those up? So I think all of those sorts of things just get closer in human connection. Be clearer, do more of the good things, do less of the other things. Don't be scared of change, because change is going to land on us either way.
Yep.
So I think, being the one that drives change, as long as you're not doing stupid stuff. I mean, you don't innovate for the hell of it, but
Yeah.
just do it because it's going to make something better. But just always be leaning into that. I love the 1%. I love the Atomic Habits. I think that was a wonderful book. And if you haven't read that, please do. That was the number one read, I think, in 2021. The little things done over time that create the big transformations
change.
through the
Yeah.
years. Yeah, it's not the big, I've got to lose 50 pounds. It's more like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to take gratitude every day. I'm going to do this, and that just slowly takes you somewhere remarkably different.
I like that. I think what I grab from that as well is if you're going to make a change that's going to land. There's no point making a change if you're just changing for the sake of, oh, well, they're doing it, I've got to do it. Follow through, make sure it lands, make sure it works, make sure that if you're investing the time and energy to do it, that you do it for the right reasons, not just because your competition down the road has done it, so, we need to do that as well. Come on, guys, we're
And
we're
develop
better
things
than
in
that, especially
market.
here.
Yeah, develop things in market.
Yeah.
Take about 80% and then put them in market. You will learn extraordinary amounts from your members. They will do the last part of, have you thought about this? We don't like this. Turn this on, turn this off, try this, try that, A/B test, all of that stuff, because no one has the answers. That's the other thing. Have confidence that no one has the answers. No one person out there has the complete playbook. Every single company who looks like they got their shit together has shown in remarkable ways that they have not. So, just try stuff, make your own playbook. And then as you get that expertise around what your members and your clients and your patients like, you get tighter and tighter. Now, the more that you shape it around them, the less you start competing, and the more you look internally and create your own unique point of view.
Yep. No, brilliant. I love it. Emma, thank you so much for coming on the show and having a chat with me and sharing your life, your story, and what you're doing now. I've greatly appreciated getting to know you, and thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me. And I love everyone that you mentioned in this podcast, and big love to everyone down under. Hope to be heading back later this year.